The X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X-Zone Radio Show or endorsed in any manner by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, the X-Zone Broadcast Network, its affiliated networks, stations, employees, or advertisers.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X-Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, and for the next 4 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X-Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X-Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. That's 7 p.m. Pacific until 11 p.m. Pacific. On the Talk Star Radio Network from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Our toll-free number tonight, 1-877-528-8255. That is toll-free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. My email address, xzone@talkstarradio.com. On MSN Messenger, talkstarradio@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and www.xzonetv.com. My producer tonight at Master Control at the home of the Talkstar Radio Network in Titusville, Florida, right across Indian River from Cape Kennedy, is the one and only Sir Alec. Alec, nice working with you tonight, as it is every night, my friend. On tonight's show, joining me in a few minutes will be Stanton T. Friedman. We're going to be talking about Roswell, the crash of 1947 of a UFO. Hour number 2, Cliff Mickelson joins us to talk about Morgellons and to give the X-Zone Nation our Morgellons update. Hour number 3, Ann Druffel will be joining us to tell us how we should investigate UFO sightings. And in hour number 3, X-1, we're going to be going back to 1957 in the premier sci-fi radio series of Old Time Radio. Tonight, episode number 83, The Moon is Green. That's tonight here live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network in the X-Zone. Today is June the 23rd, and on this day, Napoleon's wife Josephine was born on this date way back in 1763. On this date in 1836, Congress approved the Deposit Act, which contained a provision for turning over surplus federal revenue to the states. In 1868, a patent was granted for the invention of the typewriter. Okay, this is a little bit of typewriter trivia. The very first typewriter was the size of a dining room table, had only capital letters, and the paper inside the machine was not visible to the typist. The first practical typewriter was invented by Christopher Latham Scholes and was marketed by Remington Arms Company in 1873. The first novel ever written on a typewriter, Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Not as much a thought as you may think actually went into the arrangement of letters on a standard typing keyboard. The letters were arranged in such a fashion to let salesmen reach over and quickly spit out typewriter on a demo model, a word that could be spelled entirely on the first line. And Smith Corona introduced the very first portable electric typewriter in 1957 in Syracuse, New York, weighing in at a hefty 19 pounds. And let me see, on this date, the first ever national lip reading tournament was held on this date in 1926 in Philadelphia. Also on this date in 1938, Marineland opened up in Florida. On this date in 1970, Chubby Checker was arrested for possession of marijuana. I guess that explains why he was so chubby, because he always had the munchies. When we come back from this 2-minute commercial break, Stanton T. Friedman is my very special guest as the X-Zone starts for tonight, June the 23rd, in the year 2009, here in the X Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. 1-877-528-8255, toll free throughout the U.S., Canada, Alaska, and Hawaii. X Zone at TalkstarRadio.com, on MSN Messenger, TalkstarRadio at Hotmail.com, and our websites, www.xzoneradio.com and xzonetv.com. My first guest, Stanton T. Friedman, is up next on the other side of this 2-minute commercial break, live and around the world in the X Zone on Talkstar.
Take a step back in time and discover old Florida cuisine at Marsh Landing Restaurant in Fellsmere. Enjoy delicacies such as frog legs, gator tail, catfish, and swamp cabbage, or enjoy the more traditional cuisine like hand-cut Angus steaks, ribs, and seafood. Join us for breakfast with a southern flair featuring sweet potato pancakes, biscuits, and gravy, and much more. Planning a party? Marsh Landing's private dining room can accommodate groups from 8 to 80 people. While you're visiting, enjoy the historic pictures, artifacts, and stories that line the walls. Marsh Landing is truly a unique experience. Marsh Landing Restaurant, 44 North Broadway in historic Fellsmere, or visit marshlandingrestaurant.com. Marsh Landing, old Florida cuisine at its best. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X Zone broadcast network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Are you interested in the paranormal, ghosts, UFOs, or psychic phenomenon? Join me, Tim Bartley, co-host of Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, coming mid-January 2017 to the XZBN. We will channel spirits live and talk to them, revealing all kinds of amazing information. Spiritual attachments will be found and removed on the show, and so much more. To find out when you can listen to Talking to Spirits with Lightworkers Tim and Justina, visit www.xzbn.net for listeners on both sides of the veil.
Welcome back, everyone. Stanton T. Friedman is my special guest this hour. He received his BSc and MSc degrees in physics from the University of Chicago in 1955 and 1956. He was employed for 14 years as a nuclear physicist by such companies as GE, GM, Westinghouse, TRW Systems, Aerojet, General Nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas, working in such highly advanced, classified, eventually canceled programs as nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, and various compact nuclear power plants for space and terrestrial applications. Stan became interested in UFOs in 1958 and since 1967 has lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in 50 states, 9 Canadian provinces, and 16 other countries, in addition to various nuclear consulting efforts. He has published more than 90 UFO papers and has appeared on hundreds of radio and TV programs, including on Larry King in the year 2007 and twice in 2008, and many documentaries. He is the original civilian investigator of the Roswell incident and co-authored Crash at Corona, the definitive study of the Roswell incident. Top Secret Magic, his controversial book about the Majestic 12 group, established in 1947 to deal with alien technology, was published in 1996 and went through 6 printings. An expanded new edition was published in 2005. Stan was presented with a Lifetime UFO Achievement Award in Leeds, England in 2002 by UFO Magazine of the UK. He is co-author with Kathleen Marden, Betty Hill's niece, of a book in 2007 entitled Captured, The Betty and Barney Hill UFO Experience. The city of Fredericton, New Brunswick declared August 27, 2007, Stanton Friedman Day. His new book, Flying Saucers and Science, was published in June 2008 and is in its third printing. Stanton has provided written testimony to the congressional hearings, appearing twice at the UN, and been a pioneer in many aspects of ufology, including Roswell, Majestic 12, the Betty Hill, Marjorie Fish star map work, the analysis of the Delphus, Kansas physical trace case, crash saucers, flying saucer technology, and challenges to the SETI cultists. SETI, in this case, stands for Silly Effort to Investigate Gang. He has spoken at more MUFON symposia than anyone else. And for more information about Stanton Friedman, www.stantonfriedman.com. And Stan, welcome back to the X-Zone. How are you, sir? And how are things in Fredericton, New Brunswick?
Things are lovely, a bit wet, of course. Like the whole Northeast, I guess.
Oh, my gosh. Well, you see, here in Hamilton right now, it is 73 degrees under clear skies, and we're going up to 83 tomorrow under clear skies.
Well, that's coming this way. I hope.
That's right. I'll push it that way tonight, Stan. I'll push it that way tonight.
Good.
How are you?
We need
Busy?
it.
How are you? Busy as usual?
Yes, I am. It's kind of strange. You know, you get older, you figure you're going to be less busy. You might think about retirement. Next month I'll be 75. What
God
the
bless
heck?
you.
But
75.
Yeah, man. It's hard to imagine. I
God
don't believe
love
it myself, but it's true. But I was off to Brazil for almost a week, participating in a conference down there. I was speaking at a conference in Galena, Illinois, out in the northwest corner there. McMinnville, Oregon. Boy, I hit the big cities here. And, I'll be in Roswell, of course, next week. Yeah. And in August, I'll be in Denver for MUFON, and then back in Canada for the Shag Harbor Festival.
Oh, that's coming up now, isn't it?
Yeah, the 14th of August.
Mm-hmm.
I got a whole bunch of other places I'm going to. And the complication is Kathleen Marden and I are working on a new book. The title's changed 3 times, but science was wrong. How's that?
Well, you know, it wouldn't be the first time.
No, we make a point of showing that the nasty, noisy negativists have often made proclamations of impossibility that turned out to be wrong. You may have noticed that over the years.
Well, I think my favorite one of all time is, it may not be science, but it certainly goes to academia, where children are being still taught in school that Christopher Columbus discovered America.
Yeah, go up to Newfoundland and they'll say, hey, that's not the way it is, folks.
Exactly. Excuse me. As Stan, we're getting ready for the Roswell anniversary that's coming up on July the 4th. And what are you going to be talking about at Roswell this year?
Well, frankly, a lot. I'm doing 4. They'd like to take advantage of my being there. They love me in Roswell.
Well, of course, if it wasn't for Stanton Friedman, all this, you are the father of ufology.
Well, grandfather, good. I like father better.
No, you are the father, because without you and meeting with Jesse Marcel, telling the world the story of Roswell, and allowing people to add all the pieces to the UFO jigsaw puzzle, trying to get that picture all together, Stanton, where would ufology be?
I don't know. They'd be busy with other things, I guess. But, Roswell's having... they got a split personality, split 3 ways this year. For the last couple of years, there have been 2 separate programs. I'm sponsored by the museum, the International UFO Museum and Research Center, and I guess they call me a founding member, something like that. The city of Roswell has its own show going over at the Civic Center, and then this year they're being joined by a religious group, which is basically saying, oh, it's all baloney, there are no aliens, stuff like that. So you have your choice of venues. Now, I will be at the museum,
right? And
they have the speakers, and I noticed several programs I'd like to go to myself, as a matter of fact, and we meet and greet in the morning first thing, and then I'm doing 4 different lectures One is the cult of SETI. You noticed that I referred to it as silly effort to investigate.
Yes, I did.
And, well, when you look at it, these guys have had a free ride for years.
Yep.
The wonderful adventure of we're going to find extraterrestrial life out there. All we have to do is listen and listen and listen and pass the job on to our kids and our grandkids, because we know there's somebody out there, but they ain't coming here. And they assume, that aliens are sending messages our way, radio messages, using techniques and frequencies that are right up our alley. They might be 1,000 years ahead of us, 1,000,000 years ahead of us, but we're so smart that we can figure it out and just wait. Now, unfortunately, there's no evidence to substantiate this at all. They keep saying there's nothing to UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
They ignore all the large-scale scientific studies. My lectures, I talk about 5 of them, and most 98% of the people haven't read any of them. And they keep saying there's nothing going on. You can't get here from there, but they're out there, and they're more advanced than we are, but not too much, because if they were too much, then we couldn't pick them up. So, it's kind of crazy. We've had radio for roughly 110 years, give or take a little bit, depending on how you define things. The planet, unlike what was thought back a few hundred years ago, was not created. I hate to shock your listeners, but it was not created on October 23rd, 4004 B.C., as Bishop Ussher proclaimed. He lost a few zeros. It's more like 4 billion for B.C. And so when you change the perception of how long things have been around, you suddenly realize, hey, we haven't been around that long, folks.
Yep.
We don't know much about the past history of the planet, the solar system, the galaxy, the universe. We're ignorant. We're newcomers.
We're the new kids on the block.
Yeah, we're arrogant, too, of course, to go with that. Every new group thinks it's at the top of the heap.
Mm-hmm.
And, flying saucers finished the job that Nicolaus Copernicus started way back 1543. You remember Nick, good Polish astronomer, who realized that it would be rather upsetting if he had his book published while he was alive. So it was published when he died, in which he had the gall to suggest, this took gall, all right, that the Earth was not the center of the universe.
Ooh,
a little hard to imagine that somebody would say that. The church was very upset about that. The book was banned for 300 years. And a few guys were burned at the stake for agreeing with him. And you know what? Flying saucers take us not only out of the center of the universe, but, Copernicus only moved it over one step to the sun. Not far. We're still our solar system. That's it. That's the big point and around. Now we suddenly realize, the sun isn't the center of the universe. It's not the center of the galaxy. There's nothing special about it, except to us, of course, and those who may be visiting as they go by to check us out. Some people find that awful hard to accept, So it is a cult. It's got charismatic leadership. It's got very strong dogma. It's got a strong resistance to outside ideas and a very enlarged notion of its own importance. They're going to discover a signal. It's going to be the greatest discovery in man's history.
But, I've had Seth Shostak on the show, and I've asked Seth, I said, well, how do you know that they are actually going to be transmitting a signal that you'll be able to pick up and understand?
What did he say?
He avoids that question like the plague.
Yeah, I know. I devote a whole chapter in Flying Saucers and Science to the SETI cultists, to the cult of SETI. And Seth and I have met, and we've tangled. We did a debate on Coast to Coast Radio, which I won. And we were cordial to each other on the Queen Elizabeth II last westward journey. We each gave 3 lectures. This came out of the same thing that led me to get that Lifetime Achievement Award from England, the same group. Anyway, in the course of my lecture, we listened to each other. We were polite. We're gentlemen.
Yes.
And I always talk about 5 large-scale scientific studies and ask how many people have read one after I describe it. It's funny. His hand didn't go up after each one, and we debated at least 6 months later, and he still hadn't read any of them. And so it kind of sums up SETI. You start with what you want to believe, and you ignore the stuff that doesn't fit with that.
I guess, Stan, they're still waiting for Jodie Foster to apply for a full-time job, so that when contact is made, they'll have somebody there who knows what the hell to do. Stanton Friedman, please stand by. Stan, you and I have to take our commercial break with the news at the bottom of the hour. Great talking to you again, Stan. Stanton Friedman, www.stantonfriedman.com, the father of modern-day ufology. When I come back from this commercial break, on the other side of the news, we'll continue this very interesting conversation with Stanton Friedman, and if you'd like to give us a call, 1-877-528-8255. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network. My name is Rob McConnell. Stanton Friedman and I return on the other side of the news, right here in the X-Zone.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. You ain't seen nothing yet until you've gone and spent time in Roswell, New Mexico, and been part of the UFO celebration that happens around the 4th of July each and every year. Joining me this hour is the father of modern day ufology. Stanton T. Friedman is our special guest. His website is www.stantonfriedman.com. Stanton, what is the latest news on Operation Majestic 12 documents?
Well, it's an interesting question. The people keep attacking it, and the latest news, when I was in Brazil, I was talking to Robert Hastings, who's done some very good work on nukes and UFOs, and nuclear facilities and nuclear tipped missiles and all that sort of thing. And he's been in touch with Tim Cooper, who was the recipient of a whole slew of supposed Majestic 12 documents, which I found were unacceptable, and I only push 3.5, so to speak, the Eisenhower Briefing document, the Cutler Twining memo, and the Truman Forrestal memo. Now, there's a couple of hundred more pages of stuff, but I can't find a reason to accept any of them, and I've shown why a number of them are frauds.
Right.
And Tim has now stated that he's renouncing all the MJ-12 documents, not just the ones that he supposedly received, stuffed into his mailbox at a post office in California without postage on them, which is kind of a neat trick. He flunked a polygraph examination, and he refuses to take another one. But now he not only has renounced what he did, but he didn't say he faked anything now, you understand that. But he's saying they're all frauds, and I can't find a good reason to buy into that. And Robert Hastings and I had a long discussion about this, and there are problems on the periphery of the MJ-12 documents, but that's why I updated my book, Top Secret/Magic, MAJIC. In 2005, I added 5,000 words to deal with the arguments against the primary documents, as I call them, and I can't find one that stands up. And yet I still get guys saying, oh, everybody knows these things are fraudulent except Friedman. Well, I keep saying, okay, where's your argument? Tell me something about the documents you don't like. Let's see if we can deal with it. I mean, obviously everybody gets a kick out of the fact when I show Phil Klass's check to me for $1,000 for proving him wrong about the typeface on one of the documents. He thought that it was, he said it should have been elite. It's pica, therefore it's fraudulent, because he had 9 documents from the Eisenhower Library, and they were all in elite. So the Cutler-Twining memo, which is in pica, that's a fraud. He offered me $100 each for every genuine document from the National Security Council, meeting a bunch of criteria. It had to be signed and so forth.
Right.
Anyway, but he set a limit of 10, unfortunately, or I'd have made a lot of money. After I submitted 14 to him, he'd never been to the Eisenhower Library. They got 250,000 pages of National Security Council material. The thought that you can generalize from 9 to 250,000 is pretty darn silly.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I sent him the 14, there were more, but I sent him 14 and an invoice for $1,000, and he paid me. Then he got madder than heck when I used a copy of his check in something I wrote, and it's in Flying Saucers and Science as well. So everybody knows that argument is no good, and I keep looking for others because I'm willing to listen. I've been to 20 archives. I do a lot of looking, and people should understand that the documents, early 50s, 1947, and then early 50s, this is before people were using computers and templates and, typewriters. You had an item right at the beginning of the show about the first typewriter.
That's right.
Kind of intriguing, and I still use one to write address labels, as a matter of fact, believe it or not. I mean, it's an electric one, with the little ball, an IBM Selectric, I guess it's called. But what I'm saying is, I've heard more garbage. Oh, gee, nobody said top secret restricted on a document, so it must be phony. Well, the GAO wrote in their report on what all they did looking for Roswell documents for Congressman Schiff that they found several instances of the use of top secret restricted. When I asked for a copy, Stan, they're still classified. Too bad. And there's a whole long list of these things. This one of the sillier ones by the head of the CSI, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, Dr. Joseph Nickel.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he's got 3 degrees in English. That qualifies him as a scientific investigator, doesn't it?
Plus he's a magician.
I was just going to add that. I'm glad you did. So what else do you need? A master of deception. Isn't that what magicians are?
Exactly.
And he, of course, immediately decided the documents were fraud because on the front page it says 18 November, 1952. Uh-oh, the comma is a giveaway, he said. The government-style manual says you don't have a comma there. Well, if you go to the darn archives, you'll find all kinds of date formats back then, depending on who typed it. And, this is typical of the level of discussion. And they don't want to deal with all the things that I found that nobody knew to be true when we got the documents. It turned out to be true later. And, one of them is Donald Menzel's role in classified activities. Now, I must admit, I was very, very surprised, shocked. I mean, here's a guy who was considered the #1 UFO debunker, wrote 3 anti-UFO books, a Harvard professor of astronomy. Well, right away you say, what the heck is he doing on a committee of 12 where all the other 11 you can easily show had very high security clearances? Air Force generals, 3 directors of Central Intelligence, stuff like that. You sure don't need a security clearance to teach astronomy at Harvard.
Unless you're teaching it to the members of the CIA and the NSA and the Army and Navy and Air Force.
Oh, you noticed that, huh?
Yeah.
Well, what I found, to my total shock, of course I had to get permission from 3 different people to look at his papers at Harvard. And no, they're not on the computer, and you can't go to your desktop and look at all this stuff.
Everybody's groaning now, Stan.
Sorry. Yeah, the people at the Eisenhower Library have told me they've had people come to the door and say, "Can you put MJ12 in your computer and tell us what you've got?" No. Why not? Well, our stuff isn't computerized. Well, what can I do? Well, you look through our finder's aids. There's about 50 of them, and it gives you down to the folder level and box level. There's 10 million pages of stuff. Well, it's probably gone up now at the Eisenhower Library. And they're shocked. You mean they'd have to do some work? Well, it's funny, really, in its own crazy way. So,
have you ever tried to explain to somebody who is new into research what microfilm is? They still think it's something that just James Bond and spies used.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's all kinds of aspects of this that average person, people have told me, Stan, don't you know that everything's declassified after, pick a number, 20 years, 30 years, 25 years, whatever. And I said, well, I know that that's not true. I worked under security for 14 years. I've been to 20 archives. There's plenty of stuff that's still, the Eisenhower Library has over 200,000 pages of classified material. He's been out of office since 1961, for goodness sakes. So you run into all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I'm convinced, and there's an update chapter in Flying Saucers and Science, but I'm convinced that the three major documents are genuine for a whole long list of reasons, and I deal with all the objections. Well, let me give another one just to give you some flavor. Somebody pointed out that it says briefing officer. This is a briefing for the president-elect, Eisenhower. He'd been elected 2 weeks earlier, and he was being briefed at the Pentagon on all kinds of high-security stuff. And people said that there were all kinds of things that couldn't be true that were in the documents, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm getting old. Anyway, I've looked at all of these objections one by one by one, and I can't find any that stand up. It's not just Menzel. That was a shocker. I mean, I didn't like the man while he was alive, to tell you the truth. But I'm still looking for that big objection. Oh, the thing I was getting at was it lists Admiral Roscoe Hillenkoetter as MJ1. Well, he was only a vice admiral. Too bad. Documents are fraud. However, when you look more carefully at the document and standard practices at the time, you find that the use of generic ranks, in other words, you use the term admiral for rear admiral, vice admiral, 4-star, use the term general for brigadier, major, lieutenant, and 4-star, etc. Turns out that's standard practice, and the other people on the list are also, their generic ranks are used, and I found definite examples at the Eisenhower Library where Brigadier General Goodpaster, who was the staff secretary under Ike, he would take minutes or take notes at meetings when there were typically a mixture of civilian and military with Ike, and he was the one who had to keep track of, what needs to get done and who's got to do what and what assignments were made and so forth. Anyway, at the beginning of each of these memcons, as they were called, he would list the attendees, and he would list them all by generic rank, including himself, General Goodpaster. He would sign it Brigadier General Goodpaster. And I asked two different archivists independently, does this bother you, this use of generic ranks? Standard practice. Why would it bother us? That's what they did. Ike does it in one of his books that I looked at. So, you get a whole bunch of this kind of stuff. And what can I say? Some people don't want to believe that there could be secrets being kept from them, especially. That's a problem around Washington. Big shots there think, hey, if this were going on, I would know about it, and I don't, so it must not be, which is baloney. So it's weird how people keep maintaining that everybody knows they're a fraud, and you try to say, well, give me some reason for saying that. And with Tim Cooper that I mentioned earlier, he renounces all the documents, not just the ones he was connected with, but there isn't a word as to why. His feeling? This is research by proclamation. Who cares?
Yeah.
Show me evidence. That's what documents are about. Evidence. And so it's been kind of fun, but you get a little sick after a while of it. And, I go on to other things whenever I can. We mentioned Roswell. Incidentally, I'm giving 3 other talks besides the cult of SETI. One is the UFO why questions. That's what people want to know. Why would aliens come here? Why doesn't the government tell us what it knows? Why don't they land on the White House lawn? The usual litany of that sort of thing. There's another one on, this is right up my alley, star travel? Yes. That's a question mark after star travel. I worked on fission and fusion rockets, nuclear power plants for space, and it's one of the loudest objections, especially from astronomers, of course, that you can't get here from there, Stan. Don't you know that? No, I don't know that at all.
Exactly. Why are some people so narrow-minded that if we can't do it, no one else can?
Well, the thing is, they don't even know what we can do. I worked on a fusion propulsion system back in the early 60s. That's a long time ago. Now, fusion is, in our world, at the moment, sort of the ultimate. Is there a little more energy per pound than in chemical rockets? Well, yeah, there's a lot more. As a matter of fact, there's 10 million times as much energy per particle as you can get in a dumb old chemical rocket. And, people, you'd think astronomers of all people, they know that all the stars produce their energy by nuclear fusion. We figured it out, we Earthlings. I am an Earthling, and I presume you are too, last I heard, anyway.
Yes, I am.
In 1938, a brilliant scientist at Cornell University figured out the fusion reactions. And, typical Earthlings, we put it to use in 1952. We exploded the first hydrogen bomb. It produced the energy equivalent of exploding 10 million tons of TNT.
Stanton, please stand by. We've got to take our final break. X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Stanton T. Friedman, the father of modern-day ufology. www.stantonfriedman.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this break as the X-Zone continues live and around the world from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada on Talkstar.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
19 Sergeant Central. 19 Sergeant, check. Officers on the scene.
Hi, I'm Larry Lawson, host of Paranormal Stakeout. With over 36 years in law enforcement, I have learned a few things. The most important is the proper gathering and preservation of evidence is vital to putting the bad guy behind bars. It's no different in the world of paranormal investigation. Whether it's the search for the afterlife, cryptozoology, UFOs, and extraterrestrials, how we gather the evidence, preserve that evidence, and present it to a jury of our peers will make the ultimate difference in proving the existence of worlds and entities that are beyond our imagination. Join me, Larry Lawson, every week on Paranormal Stakeout when, along with my guests, we'll take a journey to prove with indisputable evidence what man has struggled to believe for centuries. Go to xzbn.net for the broadcast schedule and check me out at paranormalstakeout.com.
True healing must address 4 levels: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, for us to live joyful and productive lives. We tend to treat 3 of the 4, leaving the spiritual languishing. If you're tired of the same dysfunctional patterns cropping up in your life, Soul Balancing is for you. Trixie Phelps, owner and founder of Soul Balancing, is a naturally gifted energy healer trained in numerous esoteric forms, including shamanism. Trixie has created a powerful modality that safely and effectively clears your energetic field. A soul balancing session can remove interference, heal trauma, and restore your hope. Contact Trixie for a life-changing long-distance session today, www.soulbalancing.world.
Welcome back, everyone. Stanton T. Friedman is our special guest, www.stantonfriedman.com. First of all, Stanton, thank you very much for joining us tonight here in the X Zone, and I hope you have a great time in Roswell during the festivities coming up on the 4th of July. I understand.
Oh, starting on the 2nd.
Second, 3rd, 4th, and wrapping up on the 5th. Tell me, Stanton, Project Mogul. What's the truth behind this? You know, you listen to people like Cal Korff, and he says Roswell was nothing else but mogul.
Well, that's what shall I call it? Horse manure. Okay, I'll be polite.
Thank you, Stan.
The crazy thing is there was a Project Mogul. It was not a big deal. Somebody figured out that since you could hear sounds underwater, submarines were listening for now that they're nuclear powered, they can go a long ways underwater. Through certain channels in the water, you can hear them for a long ways away. And maybe that exists in the atmosphere, too. So when the Russians explode their first A-bomb, we'll be able to hear it with the transponder, a device sitting up there on a constant altitude balloon train, a Mogul balloon train. And, you know, you put 20, 25 of these things at 20-foot intervals, and you've got a little ballast, and they go up there, and they should stay aloft at a constant altitude for a long time and send back, they got radio signals. Nothing fancy. None of the technology was classified. The only thing classified about it was the purpose, to listen for Soviet nuclear tests. And, you know, it was brought into the picture in the 90s, when suddenly the Air Force realized that, gee, people were taking this Roswell stuff seriously. We better do something about it. So they came up with, that was the explanation. The trouble is, when you look at it carefully, there's nothing about Mogul, Cal Korff notwithstanding, that stands up to scrutiny as having explained what happened at Roswell. In the first place, there was nothing special about the balloons. They were standard, normal, neoprene weather balloons, not these huge polyethylene balloons you'll usually see on television, unfortunately. The radar reflectors were made out of balsa wood and had foil covered with paper on them that any 3-year-old could tear. Now, they were so classified that many of the flights were not accompanied by airplanes keeping track of them. They were left to lie on the ground. That tells you something. Excellent work has been done by Dr. David Rudiak, showing that there's no way any of the launches they claim were responsible for Roswell could have produced it. The timing is wrong. The materials are wrong. There was far too much material for it to be a Mogul balloon train. The rancher had recovered balloons. Every rancher down there had. They used weather balloons at the Roswell Army Airfield, standard practice. Yeah. And so it just doesn't fit. And as some famous lawyer said, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. It doesn't work. The dates are wrong, the materials are wrong, the testimony conflicts with what the witnesses said. As a matter of fact, if you look on July 8th, it says found last week. Then suddenly, it was mid-June.
Stan, we've got to say so long for tonight. Like I said, continued success. We always love having you here on the X Zone. And Kevin Randall was on the show last night, and he asked me to say hi to you.
Oh, well, good. Thank you.
Take care of yourself, Stanton. Happy trails and safe trips to you. So long now.
Bye.
Stanton T. Friedman, the father of modern-day ufology, www.stantonfriedman.com. When I come back from the news on the other side of this commercial break and the news, Cliff Mickelson will be joining me for a Morgellons update. You know, the fiber disease here live and around the world on the